Hello there. Thanks for being with us here on France 24 for Talking Europe. I'm Catherine Nicholson. Now, my guest for this part of the programme this week, the Foreign Minister of Austria, Alexander Schallenberg, who joins us on the line from Vienna today. Mr. Schallenberg, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for the invitation.
Now, I'd like to start off with some news of the last couple of days, which has shocked many of our viewers this week. News that a Moroccan citizen and two British citizens who were members of the Ukrainian army they were captured by Russian forces and have been handed death sentences now. This in a court in the self-declared Donetsk People's Republic in the east of Ukraine. How should the West respond to this news?
I believe this is utter unacceptable. These are prisoners of war, and we should support. And I had a discussion recently with the president of the International Committee of the Red Cross, who behind the scenes is trying to find ways for an exchange of prisoners of war. And that is what is needed. And these kind of show trials is exactly the contrary, and is something which, from my point of view, is utterly unacceptable.
Also this week, the Russian President Vladimir Putin said that Russia needs to, and I'll quote him, take back lands which had once been claimed by Russia or the Russian Empire. What do you make of this statement? Do you believe he actually intends to invade other parts of Europe?
Well, you never know with him. I mean, we learned on the 24th of February that we had been naive or victims of a wishful thinking to a certain degree, because we didn't expect this kind of attack and to see tank wars again in Europe. And what he says is he's denying, and he has been denying for the last couple of years, the very existence of a sovereign, independent state of Ukraine. And he continues in this line. So there's, you could say, no news there, but it shows us that he will never stop, probably.
Now, this comment he was making in reference to Peter the Great and with reference to Sweden, the current state of Sweden, of course. Now, Sweden, along with Finland, giving up military neutrality, asking right now to join NATO. Austria, currently one of the EU states which is not a member of NATO. Is this also a discussion for Austria in light of recent events?
You know, not really. Every country has its own geographical position, has its own history, and the situation of Austria is very different to that in Sweden and Finland. We don't share, for instance, like Finland, over 1,000 kilometers of common border, and we have a different history. I believe the debate we are having in Austria is how we can support more strongly the European security. And I have to underline that neutrality in Austria has always been a purely military neutrality. We don't want to join any military organizations, but on political matters, we have never been neutral. And in this war, this aggression against Ukraine, we clearly stand on the Ukrainian side. We are fully in solidarity with all the actions of the European Union, because politically speaking, there cannot be neutrality in this act of aggression.
Well, speaking about European solidarity, just over a week ago, the EU imposed a sixth package of sanctions against Russia, but it took a long time to get there, with protracted negotiations between the 27 states. Now, some are warning that this lack of unity there can actually just play into the hands of Vladimir Putin.
Well, I fully agree, and I believe what we have been doing with the first 5 packages on sanctions was the right way to do it. We discussed them behind closed doors and went public once we had an agreement. And I would have hoped that we have done the same thing on the 6th package. And I hope that we will again return to the old procedures for the 7th package. We have to be aware that Moscow is observing us, Beijing and others. And we are great in Europe to always show our divisions. And in this case, unity is the buzzword and the key word. And we have to show this unity faced with this aggression. And yes, we have to acknowledge that certain member states have higher degrees of dependencies. The economies are differently structured, and we have to take this into account, but we should do it behind closed doors in the Council before going public.
Let's talk about the other axis of this. There's sanctions. There's also the diplomatic angle, of course. So you yourself a career diplomat. And the issue of whether we should be talking to Vladimir Putin or not has come up. Now, your Chancellor, one of the European leaders that has had talks with Vladimir Putin, Karl Nehammer, described an in-person meeting he had in April as tough and not friendly. Is there value in continuing talking to Vladimir Putin?
I believe so, and I can simply cite the Secretary General of the UN, who said, if you have a problem, you have to talk to the person who either created the problem or to the person who can solve this problem. And in the first case, it's definitely Vladimir Putin. I would hope that he would sooner or later also see a role for him in solving the situation. And the Austrian Chancellor Karl Nehammer was the first Western leader to eye, face-to-face, see Vladimir Putin, the president of the Russian Federation. And it was important because we all don't know what kind of information does he get actually. Is he aware of what is happening outside of the walls of the Kremlin? And it has always been a feature of Austrian diplomacy that you talk, especially under difficult circumstances, and these are particularly difficult. But Russia won't disappear. Geography doesn't change. Russia will remain the biggest geographic neighbor of Europe. And yes, we have to talk to him and try to talk sense into him. We didn't have any expectations in this meeting, but to neglect the possibility to maybe contribute to a quicker end of this war would have been a great mistake.
Austria does have particular historic ties with Russia, Russian investment, second only to German investment in Austria. That's according to Bloomberg. As you know, former Austrian chancellors have gone on to positions on boards in Russian businesses. They have resigned those since February 24th. Your predecessor as Austrian Foreign Minister, Karin Kneißl, was open about her closeness to President Putin personally. He came to her wedding. They danced together famously. And she's been since nominated to the board of Rosneft. Do you regret these close ties of Austria and Russia?
The line of this government is extremely clear, and I'm the first foreign minister of Austria to have declared at two occasions Russian diplomats to persona non grata and asked them to leave the country. And I said to repeatedly, I will never be tempted to waltz with Vladimir Putin or any other leader of the Russian Federation. And the line of this government is very clear, also before the 24th of February already. But yes, Russia remains where it is. It has been a partner. And we had all, to a certain degree, maybe the wishful thinking hope that by engaging, we could get them to move closer to our values, to our model of life. And now we have this brutal awakening, this cold water bucket, which we got in our face to see that no, Russia is not moving our way, it's moving exactly the other way. And there will never be a return to the status quo ante in our relations with Russia or Putin.
Just a brief word about Ukraine's ambitions to join the European Union. Your Chancellor and you yourself recently talked about some sort of intermediate stage between cooperation and full membership of the EU. What does that intermediate stage look like?
Well, we fully support the aspiration of the Ukrainian government and the people in Ukraine to be part of the European family. And I believe we have to support that. But B, we have to think beyond the templates. We have to think beyond the symbolic act of giving a candidate status. What would that mean? We have a number of countries who have been for decades candidate countries of the European Union. And we have to think harder how to really make Ukraine part of the European family. And the templates of the past, you have to be either full member or you're associated, you have an association agreement, or you're a member of the economic area, are not sufficient. And we have a geostrategic responsibility, not only vis-a-vis Ukraine, but also Moldova, and for us Austrians, very important, the Western Balkans. And we plead to put our money where our mouth is and to finally get our act together, not only in Ukraine, but on the Balkans, and make it tangible. And what do I mean by that? We can think about these countries to be in parts of the common market of our policies, treat them politically in these areas if they were already full member states, if they have already adopted their acquis communautaire and there's a certain independence of the judiciary guaranteed, then we can have them even in our working groups in the council informally, while having formally our debates where we decide among us 27. But we have to think harder to give them the feeling that they're part of our model of life. Because in politics, there's no vacuum. Either we are capable of exporting our model of life and our European values, or we will be faced in our neighborhood with other models, which might be Russian, Chinese, Turkish, whatever. But I believe here we have a geostrategic responsibility, which we have to take up.
Alexander Schallenberg, thank you very much for being our guest today on Talking Europe.
Thank you.
Now, before we round off the programme, we have just got a bit of time for our fact-checking segment, Fact or Fake, this time about incorrect claims about Finnish military manoeuvres.
Is Finland preparing itself for a war with Russia? In this video, published on the 4th of May, a train is seen transporting dozens of tanks. According to these posts on the social networks, they are heading towards Russia. Finland applied for NATO membership on the 18th of May, just 2 days after its neighbour Sweden, ending decades of neutrality as the war continues in Ukraine. This video was seen by some as a sign of imminent conflict and an escalation of the war. The Finnish army quickly denied this information.
A video has been circulating online claiming to show tanks being moved to Finland's border. This isn't true. The tanks were being moved to the Army mechanised exercise Arrow 22. The exercise takes place in Niinisalo and Sääskylä.
Arrow 22 is a military exercise between the 2nd and 13th of May 2022, involving the US, UK, Latvian and Estonian armed forces. The US Department of Defence also posted about this online.
The 2nd Cavalry Regiment performed security during Exercise Arrow 22 at Niinisalo training area in Finland, May the 4th, 2022.
It is possible to geolocalise the video using the tower visible in the background in order to understand the location and direction of the train. The images were filmed in Tampere in the southwest of the country. This geolocalisation demonstrates that the train is heading away from and not towards Russia, as the social media posts claim.
And that's it from us for now. Thanks very much for being with us. See you soon.